Hey people, it's Hugo here, and in this video we're going to look into the new micro-batching incremental strategy that DBT have released for BigQuery. It's pretty interesting. There are a few gotchas, so let's dive right in. So starting point is I wrote an article on this before actually having tried it in terms of getting set up, and the conclusion I kind of came to was it's not really doing anything that different under the hood unless you have really, really big data. And what it does do is make it a little bit easier for people to write incremental models. And if you go ahead to the documentation, you can kind of see that. So in this example, we're changing the config so that the incremental strategy is microbatch. We're adding a few more event parameters around what the batches should be. But then when it comes to actually writing the query, it's a lot simpler because we don't have this complicated ginger thing that we normally have with the sort of percentage marks and is incremental, which, people can find confusing if you haven't done that before. And, I think the whole goal, right, of what we're trying to do here is, okay, we've got lots of data, it arrives, it's got a timestamp. How do we process that incrementally? How do we process it quickly? So in terms of getting set up, if you guys have an existing BigQuery environment, I would recommend creating a new one with something like venv, and then pip installing the new packages. So you probably won't have the latest dbt core or dbt BigQuery packages because these are in beta. So after you've created your environment, you're going to have to run install dbt core equals 1.90b2, something like that. And then the same thing for dbt BigQuery, which is B1. Cool. So I'm going to show you this little model, and I've got this here. So we keep materialized equals incremental. I'm going to keep my partitions. Maybe this is wrong. Maybe that should be removed. I'm not sure. And I'm going to have this incremental strategy, which is microbatch. And then the new things are event time. So that's telling DBT what column to use as the date. Batch size, which says how big the batches should be. And then also begin. So for the first run of an incremental batch, this is how far back we're going to look. We probably don't need to do that because our company didn't exist 4 years ago. And we're going to stick there. So I'm also going to delete what's in the compiled file, just so that you guys can see what happens when we actually run this. I'm also going to remove the look back for now. Save the file. And now we can run the model. You're also going to see that I've commented this out. So this is what I had before. Just filtering on the date. Fairly classic. Now, this isn't a huge table, but after 15 seconds, we can see we've processed 422 megabytes. If we go over to BigQuery, and I just take a look at the last few days' data, just make sure I've actually got something. It would be a bit worrying if we didn't, but we can see I've got a few thousand rows for the last couple of days. Not quite today because it's not the end of the day yet. Lots of orchestration going on, and seems to be working. So we can sort of dive in under the hood here and take a look at the compiled code. So I'm going to head into not target, yes, target, not compiled. Let's go into run. And we can see this is very similar for insert overwrite. We are setting the partitions for replacement via clean temp table, which is going to get dropped at the end. That clean temp table gets created by DBT based on what's in the config. It's up here. And, kind of wondering what that sort of config is. It's a bit of a black box. But you can also see that we've got some more stuff going on. So normally we wouldn't have this folder. We just have this SQL file. Now we have a folder with the different bits and bobs here. So we can see we've got a bunch of other SQL files, and it's basically one per microbatch. So under the hood, dbt is basically doing the same thing but splitting it into multiple queries. Now it's a bit weird that I've got all of these. I kind of only expected to see one. So I'm going to delete those because I think they might have been from before, and I'm going to run this again. Okay, cool. So we can see here, without a look back equals to 3 or whatever, because this is a daily microbatch, I've actually only created one day, one microbatch here. And this is kind of interesting because now I'm kind of confused, because I don't know if dbt is going to get like 1 day's worth of data, 2 days worth of data. It said I didn't need this. So what's going on? No idea. So I'm going to go ahead and delete some data from my table. This is very bad. You should never do this because I'm in production, but I am the data team, so it's okay. And now we can see there's nothing for the 7th and the 8th. So, if I had this here before, I would know that I was going to miss a day, right? Because I'm going to get the 8th, but maybe I won't get, maybe I won't get the 7th. And technically that's equal, right? So let's see what happens if I run this again. So we can see again, we've got one batch of data for the 8th. So I'm interested to see if this microbatch strategy is going to give me data for the 7th. Cool, so that's done. Let's go check. Okay, so we do have data for the 7th, even though there's only a batch for the 8th. So I'm not really sure what's going on here, but looks like microbatch is going to fetch missing dates without you having to do anything. Now, that's the first thing I've found. So that could be right, could be wrong. That's what I'm seeing. The other thing is that this table really isn't that big. 420 megabytes is still quite a lot for it, though. So if I take a look at insert override, let's just go back in time to what we had before. This is going to be a bad model because I'm doing insert override. There's no is incremental. So this is equivalent to me doing a full refresh. This is what you want to avoid, right? The whole reason we're here is because we're trying to process data faster and more efficiently. So you would hope that doing this is going to make things better. And we can see that doing a full refresh is pretty slow on insert overwrite. And this is what confuses me. So here I know I've basically done a full refresh. I've done the same amount of data. It's taken the same amount of time, marginally slower. Not really. Same SQL under the hood in run, although this table probably looks a little bit different. You can't inspect it because it always gets dropped. And obviously if I run this query again, I'll probably just see the same thing. There are a few more events. And yeah, it's not great. Now the weird thing is, if I add this incremental thing again, and so that I can update my table, I'm going to make this last 3 days. This is insert overwrite. So if I delete the latest 2 days again, and then take a look at what we've got. Okay, so I've lost the 7th and the 8th. And now we're going to run insert overwrite as we would do normally with a filter for the last 2 days. You can see this so much quicker. So 8 seconds, but only 7 megabytes processed. Go back to BigQuery. See if we got the data. We got the data. The data's there. Let's take a look at app events clean. SQL's the same. Setting our temp table and cracking on. Apart from in this case, we've explicitly said that the temp table has got to only be the last few days. So, sort of looking at that, I'm still a bit confused because the whole vibe of microbatch is to mean that the syntax is easier, but you're basically doing the same thing. I haven't really been able to get that to work on this. And there are now 2 more quite rogue things that happen. So if I make this microbatch again, and I keep is incremental, and just for completeness' sake, let's delete the data again. Just see what happens. And actually, let's make this 1 day, right? So given that's the SQL, we should miss the 7th of November. You'll see that we're just doing 1 batch. And it's pretty quick, actually. 1.7 megabytes, 7 seconds. And we also have data for the 7th, which is interesting. But I was only able to do that by adding this in. So not sure if I was supposed to do that, but seems to have worked. Now, the other thing, which is a bit scary, is if you take that out and then throw in this look back parameter. The look back parameter is, you're going to process the number of, 3 batches prior to the latest bookmark, and not sure what the bookmark is because it's not in the docs anywhere, but, let's go with it. I hate doing this. So now we can see we've got multiple batches, right? We expect that. DBT is going to run a different query for each batch. And then if we go here, we can see we've got different SQL files getting generated. They're identical, right? Which means that what's happening under the hood is presumably this table is getting created, dropped, and so on. The thing I don't like, though, is that we're processing 422 megabytes every time. And that means I'm now about to do this 4 times, which is strange because, it says in the docs that I don't need to put the syntax in. So, yeah, that is the broad summary of microbatch right now. I think for regular incremental use cases, I'm clearly missing a trick and not understanding something. This is potentially helpful if you have a batch of data, like in a day, where that batch is enormous and maybe that needs to get chunked up into different queries. It's very similar to insert overwrite because what we're looking at under the hood is exactly the same. What's different is how this temp table is getting produced, as far as I can tell. And in terms of the data processed, I think just be careful, right? Just by thinking I'm going to do 4 batches here, I've actually now processed the data 4 times. And, I've tried faithfully to follow what I was meant to do. Looks like microbatch plus the existing incremental syntax can work and be quick. But again, for sort of like regular incremental use case, not entirely sure what it's doing. But yeah, that is my summary of walking into dbt microbatch. If you've used this already and you know I'm missing a trick, please let me know. I'd be really interested to hear if you're at dbt and a solutions engineer, and again, I've screwed up. Please just let me know. This video is basically just to get people onto microbatch and understanding its benefits and how to use it better. So yeah, that's the summary, and yeah, happy camping.